Hello, so I've decided to do a post-mortem video on a game that Dan DeRocha and I created for the Indies versus PewDiePie game jam that happened across the weekend. It was a 72-hour game jam, and the challenge was to create a game that was funny to watch and funny to play. And our entry was called King of the Internet, and it's basically a game about jumping around and shooting gnomes that we all knew. And, well, shooting gnomes with kittens. And among other things, you get to shoot internet trolls, you get to shoot Tay, and you get to shoot narwhals. Is that it? Gnomes, narwhals, Tay. Yeah, that's it. And you get a gun that shoots kittens, and you get a gun that shoots potatoes, and you get another gun that shoots nopes. So you literally shoot the word nope at things. You're a little ninja. You're jumping around the level. The controls are quite kind of bouncy and fluid. So you're moving quite quickly, sliding around the place, shooting at these guys, picking up ammo, picking up medkits. You've also got a focus ability, so as you're sort of bouncing off walls and things, you're going pretty quick, so you can jump pretty high. So you're bouncing around and you can press it's shift on the keyboard controls on a left trigger if you're using an Xbox controller, and you actually focus, which if you're mid jump you'll just pause mid-air without pausing. So it's sort of like, I don't know, a weird extreme bullet time. So you're flying through mid-air, you see a gnome that's weeing at you, you pause to dodge the wee or stop yourself falling into the wee, and then you can let off a load of shots and hit the gnome. But you can't focus if you're covered in wee. So if you get hit with wee, not a wee, you get covered in wee. Your character gets covered in wee. Yeah, you can't focus. But if you're focusing and the wee is on its way towards you, you won't get hit by it. So it's quite a cool little ability. Lets you dodge wee by focusing. Not sure how that works, but there we go. Basically, me and Dan started off the process by coming up with a bunch of concepts we had for the game jam, and our ideas were an internet meme game, which was one of my ideas, which obviously fed into this one. Broking Bad, which was a game. There's another one of my ones, which was about mixing various weird ingredients to create different things. So you'd have played a sort of mad scientist, meth lab sort of guy, basically Walter White, and you mixed random ingredients like, I don't know, troll sweat. I don't know why I'm thought of troll sweat, and you'd mix that with a bunch of other stuff, and the game was kind of just finding out what you could come up with by mixing these random things and seeing what their value were, and the better thing you created, the more value it would have, and the cooler ingredients you could buy. The other games were, what did we have? We had a bungee jumping game from Dan, so kind of bungee jumping and then procedurally generated jump where you just dodge certain things, and the bear scare game, which is quite a good one, where you played a bear and you had to sneak up on a sort of unsuspecting couples in different settings and steal their picnics. That could be quite fun. And what else did we have? Oh, and the bumper cars game. So the bumper cars game, we wanted a physics object based game where you were sort of in really over the top bumper cars, and you would have to sort of just basically roll around hitting into different bumper cars and things just flying everywhere. And that is actually the concept we decided to go with. So we started developing that, and one of the main things with game jams, I always kind of like to set out with a sort of goal. I mean, I haven't done many, but the ones I have done, I've always wanted to set out with a goal in mind of what I want to achieve sort of personally with the game jam and with things that I want to learn during the game jam. And with this one, I really wanted to work with procedurally generating certain things and random systems, so you could get different things happening each playthrough. So because it was fun to watch, I thought, a lot of games that are successful in Let's Play series are procedurally generated and have a lot of random elements to them. you know, it makes it more interesting for the viewer because you never know what's going to happen. So if you're watching a story-based game, you know exactly what's going to happen every time. It's a lot less interesting because you can read up on what the story is or what the narrative is, and as soon as it happens, you know that's what's going to happen. So that played directly into the sort of what I wanted to learn and what I thought would be successful in the game jam. So that was great. So we started getting down to prototyping. I started prototyping a random enemy system for the bumper car game. So my idea was each time you'd load up, you'd have a different bunch of enemies to sort of bump against. Hopefully I can show you a screenshot of that now. There we go. And that was the sort of thing I wanted to learn and wanted to do. So that was cool. And it was a bunch of different colored blocks. I think we had 4 enemy types, and every time you loaded the game, you would have a different bunch of things spawning. So the spawner would actually randomly move about the level, choose a random enemy. So yeah, it would have a bunch of the random elements were random placement in the level. So the spawner object would bounce around the level within a predetermined range, and then it would check to see which enemies were available, and then pick a random one out of the available numbers, and plonk one there and spawn it, and then move on to its next position. So that was really cool, and I actually programmed that so it had a cap number as well, so I could set how many enemies we wanted to spawn. So that was really fun. I got that working. Really happy with that. And the next thing, it was kind of weird because there was no like interaction. It was just this thing spawning enemies. So we thought, right, I'll get a player controller in there. At first, we started with a sort of top-down view, and the player controller was a sort of an 8-way directional controller, and it was okay. I mean, it was sort of all right, but I'd been fiddling around with physics objects again because the bumper car game would be a physics object-based game with things flying everywhere, and when I entered the physics objects into the game, they were just falling down because that's the settings I was messing around with, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I was spawning hundreds and hundreds of enemies and filling up this level. So just as a sort of kind of point, just to sort of get the game going, I programmed the controller to be just a sort of 2D side-scrolling platformer player controller instead. And then these enemies were sort of bouncing around everywhere and filling up the screen, and I was like, hey, this is quite cool. So I get a stack of enemies, and I can climb up them and bounce on top of them and do all sorts of stuff. And that sort of didn't really make it into the final game very clearly. I think if you let enough medkits and things spawn, if you get lucky with that, they'll actually stack up, but it's not a huge feature of the game. So that was cool. And then I started putting in another feature that didn't really make it into the final. The final one was an ability where you actually sort of triggered this mini explosion on the character, and the character would force every physics object within the screen up a certain distance. It was quite weird. So you start getting these really random waves and bounces and things, and that was quite cool. So I liked that, so I kind of stuck with that. And I think Dan was sleeping at this point, or he was either sleeping or at the pub. But so I just sort of made an executive decision to stick with this 2D thing, which was okay, but it totally, because it was fun, right? So I thought, okay, that's cool, we're going to stick with that. But it totally diverged from what the game was set out to, what we set out to make, which was this bumper car game. So now we had this physics level side-scrolling weird mashup, and I was like, okay, right, so what could I do next? And I thought, I'll give the player a gun, because I was running out of ideas, or I was tired, I don't know, but he got a gun. And I sort of went back to my original idea about the internet memes, and I thought, right, what is internet meme, kittens, the player is going to fire kittens. And the movement was already kind of fun, so that was there. And then I gave him a ridiculous gun that fired kittens with a bit of screen shake on there to make it feel more arcadey and silly, and that was cool. It worked. Then I made the kittens bounce everywhere, and I was like, right, we've got something going here. And the kittens that bounced off the walls and bounced off these physics objects, and I was like, okay, right, that's good. It was starting to get fun to play, So the next bit was really adding the enemies, and this was a bit more interesting. So I started off. I'm not sure how I got to gnomes. Again, this might have been a late night decision, or I was googling for some inspiration, found gnomes, and I thought the gnome picture was funny, so I was like, right, we're having enemy gnomes, and I started working to make them I wanted them to fall down and stay stationary and act like a bit of a turret and just shoot at you from wherever they stood, which that is what they ended up doing. However, I made them fire these white projectiles, which was really, it looked like the gnomes were just jizzing everywhere. And I showed my girlfriend, and she said that may be not exactly what you want to end up with. And I think that was the right call, because I think it would have been too far. As funny as it was, so I changed the jizz to we. And now the gnomes wee at you. that was how the gnomes were. The gnomes were born. And yeah, they're the first enemy you come against, so they don't actually do any damage to you. And whilst I was making them, I thought, oh right, they wee. What happens when the wee hits you? Do I want it to kill you? And the wee is actually pretty hard to avoid, because it's this massive stream of piss like shooting across the screen. So I was thinking, oh okay, there's a good chance that you're gonna hit into that, because this stuff is just going everywhere. I don't think it bounces off the walls. I can't remember whether I programmed that to happen or not. But yeah, so it doesn't bounce off the wall. Does it bounce off the walls? I can't remember. But yeah, anyway, it's a pretty. No, it doesn't bounce off the walls. The walls act as cover, because but even before that, it was even worse. It was going, it wasn't colliding with anything. It was going everywhere, and it's really hard to avoid. So yeah, I decided not to make the player actually take damage or die from that, but rather the player can't use the focus ability. So that's the penalty for not being able to dodge the Wii. But the focus ability actually came out of we wanted to be able to sort of grab onto things, grab onto walls, and do a few sort of trick jumps. And we started making it, and it didn't quite get to feeling quite as we wanted. It was clunky, it wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure if we'd spent more time on it, if we had more time, we could have got that working. But I figured, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? We want the player to have this sort of control of the character and feel like a badass. You're flying through the air, grabbing something, jumping, going to another direction. And I figured out that I could make the player stop midair pretty easily, and that would give them that sort of feeling, so they could stop, spin around 360 degrees, shoot all the enemies, or if there was some Wii coming towards them, stop suddenly, dodge the Wii, shoot the gnome, and then carry on. And that worked, and I think it feels pretty good, and it sort of allows the player to sort of bounce around, do these sort of trick jumps, and yeah, so that worked quite well with the Wii, as we wanted the penalty for being hit by it would take this ability away from you, which is a pretty useful ability to have. Again, if you're actually executing that ability whilst being hit by Wii, it won't affect you. So again, it's a handy thing to do. So that all worked out pretty well. The next thing was obviously fleshing out the 3 remaining enemies that I'd created, which were all just physics boxes at the time. I immediately thought, right, okay, so we've got this one enemy in. He doesn't actually hurt you. He's pretty difficult to avoid, but it's overall not a huge penalty to the player if he doesn't avoid their projectiles. So right, I thought, okay, next we need a enemy that does actually have some sort of consequence when the player messes up. And that's how the troll face was born. It was I just thought it has to be a troll face. It just makes sense. If you're hit by a troll face, you lose health, just like in real life. So that enemy, as it's spawned, it takes these physics sort of settings on as it's created, and then every 5 seconds, or I can't remember, it actually has an impulse applied to it, so it's jettisoned at a certain pace towards the position of the player. So these things are sort of dumb, again, like real trolls, I guess, but as they're in existence, they slowly work their way towards the player, and when you've got 30 of them in the level that and they're all bouncing off each other, they tend to sort of like trickle through the level towards you. So that's kind of cool. That kind of worked out pretty well. I was happy with how they are. I've had a few people say they're pretty tough, because you've got 5 hearts of health, and they do sort of come careering at you. As the more of them spawn and there's more of them bouncing around, their speed sort of ticks up ever so slowly. And if they're in the level long enough, they start flying around at this crazy pace, which is pretty funny. The next enemy to be implemented was Tay, and I really like Tay, and I really like his music still. And so I thought, oh, I can't make him a really horrible enemy to avoid. So I thought he's just, you know, when he was big on the internet, it was sort of unavoidable. You would see Tay if you're on YouTube. So I just made him this massive character, this massive enemy that didn't hurt the player at all, but just got in the way of everything. And the potato gun, which I'll come to later, doesn't hurt him because it makes sense that Tay likes potatoes. I don't know why, but it doesn't hurt him, so you can't get rid of him. And that was for a balancing reason, because the potato gun is pretty powerful. So it's fully automatic. You just hold down the fire button and it just sprays out potatoes everywhere. That kills everything in one shot. It's cool. It's fun to use, but it's pretty powerful. So yeah, I thought, right, so Tay can be a balancing enemy for the potato gun, so you can't actually kill him with the potato gun. So yeah, he's big and clunky, gets in the way. He also has a fun side effect that I didn't plan for, which is he bottlenecks the level. So if you get Tay in a random place, he can actually bottleneck a bunch of troll faces in, so they can't get to you, which kind of leaves you with this weird bit at the end of the level if you've cleared out the level and on the third or fourth wave, and you're like, okay, I need to find some more enemies, and you get to this point, and there'll be a whole corner of the level that's just full of troll faces and Tay all like jammed in there, and you're like, right, okay, equip the note gun and you start blasting your way through, which is a lot of fun. And then the last enemy, I was really stuck with the last enemy, and it came quite late on in the development, after the weapons, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it's the narwhal, so it's this little narwhal that's quite hard to see and quite hard to shoot, because it's the smallest of all the enemies. And I couldn't work out what to do, and I'm still not entirely happy with how it turned out. But it sort of works. It was supposed to be I was thinking of just a giant explosion, so you'd have this really cute narwhal, and it would just explode and destroy everything, destroy all the enemies, and destroy you. And, oh, that was another point about the troll faces. They actually destroy the gnomes, so that's another sort of a weird thing. So, you know, they're bouncing everywhere. They will just destroy you or the gnomes. That was something I wanted to play on a bit more, maybe being able to bounce the troll faces at the gnomes, but I didn't get around to doing. Anyway, these narwhals I wanted to blow up and just destroy everything. That didn't really work. It was really buggy. It would send the player flying. I had a bunch of problems with it. So I was like, okay, right, what else can I do with them? And I thought, oh, okay, if I want them to just send the player flying. And that mechanic has stayed in there, but it's buggy. So if you get hit by a narwhal, it sends you, the narwhal suddenly quadruples in size, and it'll send the player flying off into the distance. Which has the drawback of sometimes sending the player flying off into the scenery and getting stuck in the scenery and just blocking the whole game, which is a right pain in the neck. But it snuck in there, that bug. The other narwhal ability is the fact that it depletes all your ammunition apart from the kitten gun. It's the kitten gun has infinite ammo, because you are buggered if you totally run out of ammo. So I thought, kitten gun must have infinite ammo. But the narwhal depletes everything apart from that, which is kind of, again, by the point in the game you'll have the narwhal, usually there's like bunches of ammo and health spawning everywhere because there's so many enemies, or there's the potential to. So I wanted to balance that out a bit and let the narwhal sort of deplete your special weapon ammo a bit to sort of make supplies a bit more valuable. Anyway, the weapons. So we've got the kitten gun, which is the one I spoke about earlier, which is the default weapon. That just has. I needed to give that infinite ammo because I thought, one, it's quite funny. That's the fun part of the game, is just rolling around shooting all these stupid kittens at stupid enemies. So I was like, right, that can have infinite ammo. If I had more time to balance stuff out and change things up a bit, I don't know if I'd stick with a weapon with infinite ammo, because you can just spam it and the projectiles bounce. Maybe the weapon that had infinite ammo would be a bit crappier. But yeah, and the other two guns with the note gun. So this fires 3 projectiles, 3 smaller projectiles than the kittens, in a cone in front of the player, which is quite good for clearing out areas like jam-packed with enemies. So I'm pretty happy with that weapon how that weapon turned out. projectiles don't bounce with that weapon. They actually just get destroyed on impact with anything at all. Same with the potato gun. Projectiles are destroyed on impact. So again, the potato gun is a fully automatic gun that you just hold down the trigger and it'll just shoot a stream of potatoes, and you can sit there and spin around and shoot potatoes at everything. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, those weapons are all right. I would have liked to added more in the game, but yeah, as with jams, you don't get a huge amount of time to add loads of crazy stuff. If I had more time with that as well, I think I'd have added random weapon spawners around the level, which I should have done in hindsight. I should have applied the enemy system to the weapon spawner, just so that every time the level started again, you'd have a different spot for the weapon, which could have been quite cool, but I didn't get a chance to do that. The next thing I added was health pickups and ammo pickups. So the first problem I had was a friend of mine played it. Cheers, Dave, from who I met whilst working at CA. He played it and gave a quick playtest for me, and he was like, "Oh, these troll phases are way too hard. They just fire at me and I'm dead." So I took working on the sort of stuff I wanted to learn, which was more procedurally generated content and random spawning of things. I gave each enemy a different chance to drop a various combination of loot. The gnomes just drop health packs, and then I set it up so each enemy had a percentage chance of what loot to drop. So you might have I think the gnomes have got something like 4% chance to drop a health pack, which was interesting because initially I set that to much higher, but considering you have so many enemies in this game that, I'd say like 3 out of 5 playthroughs end up with just loot dropped all across the floor. Troll faces have a chance to drop med kits, snope gun ammo, I nearly called it shotgun ammo then, and a very small chance to drop one of each. Taze on Day is a bit different again because he's not totally dangerous like the other two, so I gave him the ability to drop potato ammo. I think he's the only enemy, I can't remember if him and the narwhal drop potato ammo, but Taze on Day also has a very small chance to drop, I think he explodes into everything and drops 4 medikits at the same time, so that's pretty cool. So you could actually, if you're lucky with a Taze on Day kill, you just that sounds so weird to say, you'll get an explosion and get loads of loot and loads of supplies, so that's quite good. And the narwhals have a very small chance to drop stuff, and I think they can drop anything, but it's tiny. Again, like a successful jam for me in that aspect, because that was interesting, learning how to sort of set up this random system, how to balance it. Really interesting. It's something I'm quite interested in my sort of design, is setting up these systems so they're balanced and interesting. And yeah, that worked pretty well. And then we were coming to the end of the game, so I needed to gamify it. That's such a horrible word, gamify, but not gamify it, but give some conditions. So we've already had a death condition and penalties to the player for not avoiding certain mechanics. Next, it needed a win condition, and I thought to myself, right, I've got these 4 enemy types, each with very specific characteristics, specific difficulties to the encounter, and they do different things and change the game in different ways. And I thought, right, waves, let's have, if you go into this game and play against the troll faces right other way, it's going to be really frustrating because you're not going to understand, and you're just going to have a troll just come up here and kill you straight away probably. So I thought, right, we'll start off with the gnomes, because you can see they shoot projectiles, they're annoying, there's a challenge there, but they're not as difficult as the troll faces. And the narwhal only tends to have an impact only does have an impact on the player once the players actually gain the 2 special weapons, so having them on the start of the game was pretty useless too. And Taze on Day was just not enough of a challenge for the first player, and he's not a real interesting enemy until there's other enemies in the level being affected by his collision and him blocking up the level. So the gnomes were first, followed by the trolls to give some urgency to the player, followed by Taze on Day to sort of mix up the dynamic between the two existing enemies already, and then followed by the narwhal, because by that point in the game the player would probably have access to the special weapons that the narwhal sort of had that systematic relationship with. So the narwhal would deplete your ammo. That immediately, yeah, I decided to add those as waves. And you go through the levels, and once you hit the 4th wave, you're good. But then I had the problem of determining how, you couldn't immediately have the player hit the 4th wave and win, because you've still got a wave of enemies to destroy. You couldn't say once the player had cleared out all the enemies, because there was no great way of, well, I didn't figure out a great way of managing that in the time we had, because trolls killed other enemies, and every now and again one of the enemies would just spawn just at the bottom of the screen outside of the layout for some reason. Don't know why. So you couldn't say, okay, we're going to spawn 100 enemies throughout the game and the player needs to kill 100 enemies, because it would never happen. You'd never make the 400 kills. The trolls would kill stuff would every now and again spawn in the scenery, which wouldn't allow you to kill it and whatnot. So I played through the game a couple of times and figured out by the time you get to the 4th wave, you're usually around the 200 and something kills. So I thought, right, okay, if I play through and see the amount of kills I get each time I do get to the 4th wave, and just kill as much stuff as left without anything happening, without just regular playthroughs. And I did that, and it was around the 350 mark each time. So I was killing on average about 350 enemies. I thought, okay, right. So to account for any bugs or oddities or an unlucky amount of trolls killing gnomes, I'd set it to 330 kills, I think it is. So once you get up, if you make it to the 4th wave and get 330 kills, you become the king of the internet, and that was the win condition of the game. And I painted up a really quick win screen, so of the little ninja dude sitting there on his throne, which is a toilet. So that's really good. Yeah, and that's about it. To wrap things up, I think it was a cool entry. It was a different sort of game that I haven't really done much with before. It was really fun. Personally, I learned everything that I wanted, or not everything. I learned or got an opportunity to play around with the sort of systems and the sort of things that I wanted to play around with. So for me, it was a success. All the audio, Dan and me chatted about the audio. Then Dan came in and recorded all that. I don't know if it all made it in because I fell asleep. Sorry, Dan. And yeah, it was pretty well. The main things I think I would have done if I had did this particular jam again, it'd be really nice to have an artist on board. I would have taken into consideration the music and sounds earlier on, and I would have done a bit more on the balancing if I had relieved the art stuff. If someone else was taking care of that, done a bit more on the balancing and how the systems interact with each other and things like that. But yeah, it was a great jam. It was really, really fun to do, and I'm a strong advocate of doing game jams, especially if you're trying to break in, or if you're anyway interested in game development. You should definitely check out Game Jam. Ludum Dare is a great one, or Ludum Dare, however you pronounce it. This one was a great one. I don't know if they'll be doing it again. Really enjoyed it, and yeah, Global Game Jam, of course, and it was really good fun. Definitely do it again, and looking forward to seeing what the results are, and hopefully I'll get a chance to play those games. So if you've listened to this or watched this, thanks for watching and listening, and please share it about and vote for my game. Thank you.